Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful video. More on Gary Gygax as a wargame innovator. Today, I have a very special guest helping me making this an understandable video. Hello, Prince.
Very, very special. I was selected for my obtuseness, my really wavering grasp of the of wargaming and the English language in general. No, the reason I'm here, I think we discussed this before, is that you have put together what seems to be a beautiful slide, a beautiful presentation, but you're very I think, deep into the subject matter that you're about to discuss. And the fear is that if you were to run it by yourself, that it would become somewhat incomprehensible. So instead of the usual soliloquy or monologue, we're going to be doing a dialogue. So this is a little bit of an experimental format. Expect me to interrupt a lot, ask irrelevant questions, probably not pay attention. But I'll try to keep those impulses in check as we go through this this magic that you've put together here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we see some of the original magic right on the starting screen, right? We see the young Gary Gygax with an even younger Dave Arneson sitting behind him, and they're doing some proper miniature wargaming and drinking some proper Coca-Cola from the glass bottles and everything. Probably somebody's smoking in the room right now.
They're all smoking. It's the 50s.
Well, that should be the 70s or late
70.
60s.
Well, yeah, late 60s. Well, early 50s too. I remember
No,
all the
no,
black and white movies.
no.
You see, this is
Arneson
the
is not old enough. That should,
type of tangential asides that
yeah.
really people go to for this wargaming channel. Yeah.
Okay. Also, in the 50s, we would have flat miniatures, right? So in the very early days, they had flat miniatures,
Oh yeah.
and only later they would become fully 3D. So, and this is beyond that transition. It might be, I don't know, 72 or something, or 69.
Oh
Okay,
yes.
so let's move on. So I made a lengthy video about how Gary invented polished and made perfect the attack matrix or the battle matrix for the Empires in Arms games, and that still echoes in the Rule Cyclopedia and in other games. But Empires in Arms is recognized as one of the grandest war games of all time. It's just amazing. But watch the other video if you're interested in that. But another stalwart, another big name in the wargaming world is Advanced Squad Leader, and this is what sort of is in this front and center tonight. So what is
Uh,
Advanced? Yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah. I was about to say even I've heard of Advanced Squad Leader. I've never played it. It's the grand sort of the Rolls Royce of chit-based wargaming, I believe.
Yeah, it is. It is. Here on the left side of the slide, you can see a little board. So it's played on a board with hexes and terrain, and
Hmm.
those maps. There are a lot of them, and they are called geomorphic maps, which in that sense means you can rearrange them, right? So you have dozens or even hundreds of them. I think they're at 150 now, and they can be rearranged for any scenario that might be interesting. And you have these little cardboard chits, and they demarcate your units and most other things. So ASL is very peculiar about not wanting you to be forced to write down anything. So you don't have character sheets or anything. You do everything on the board. That's sort of the vision that they have. And on the right side now, you can see the rulebook, and this is daunting, right? This is like it's inspired by army manuals with a 3-ring binder, and
Oh yeah.
yeah. So if you're
This
new,
is a hefty chonker. I assume most of this is core rules, right?
well, in a way, right? So the true core is the first chapter. The chapter A is the infantry rules. You can sort of play with
Mhm.
only that, and then you add in, right? Once you progress into the game, you add in uh,
Uh,
artillery,
Tanks and artillery.
and
Yeah.
then once you master artillery, then you can add in tanks and vehicles. Um,
Okay. Sort of like what is it? Sort of a Beck me configuration going on
uh,
here.
in a way, yes,
No, and we
and
don't talk about Beck me in your podcast. Okay. All
no,
right.
we can, it's no problem. You know, we
No,
have
please continue.
we have both kinds of OSR, basic and advanced. So it's like
Basic and advanced. Yeah,
country and
yeah.
western.
Of course.
It's both kinds.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then you later add, you add in off-board artillery, and then later you add in the Pacific theater of operations, the Japanese and the Chinese, and so on and so on. It gets bigger, right?
Yes.
Okay, so but this is special in the way that's recognized as one of the most complex games ever. On the other hand, it's praised for its comprehensiveness and addictiveness, and the addictiveness comes from the zero downtime. So you're always on; it's always your turn. So in contrast to what you would expect, right, to be waiting for a long time once the opponent until the opponent has done his turn. That's not the case. So you are always on. You're always looking. Can I react? Can I shoot at this guy while he's moving? So that's really, really addictive. And on the comprehensiveness, it's sort of like the rulebook allows two adults to play to the full hilt with anything they could imagine as an action, but they don't need the dungeon master, right? Because the rulebook is so comprehensive, you can attempt anything. So you're saying,
Yeah. It is closed, right? In a way. So
yeah,
it covers all the possible actions, and it's not possible to take actions that are not covered by the
yes,
rulebook, right? Yeah.
that's
Okay. Perfect.
but they are so far out that they are enough for a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I could go on and on, about this, but the idea is clear, I think. So the rules are impeccable. They are nearly not changed since 1985, and they are, maybe some people say without even joking, but without even being joking, that those they are amazed that human beings can even create such a closed rule system that still holds together, right? And once you love the rules, they love you back. So you get more options and more insight the more you engage with the rules. So that's sort of the trick there. But it remains imminently playable. So it plays quick, it plays fast. There's a lot of things happening, and as I said, you're always playing.
You're
And
always engaged. So, but like as soon as you're, so there's a very large initial cost to mastering it, but then you're done.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I think the entry hurdle is very big,
Yeah,
but
sorry, the barrier of entry is very high, but as soon as that happens, then you,
yeah,
you can actually play it quite quickly. It doesn't have a lot of setup time, constantly engaging, and it takes a long time for it to be quote unquote played out, right?
that's true. I
Possibly
mean,
never.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You can only play ASL and never feel the lack, right? Of
Yeah,
any.
I heard that there were rules for like almost every military unit that was present in World War II. I think, if I recall that correctly,
Yeah,
was has stats in advanced squad leader.
that's about right. And they're
Oh yeah.
scraping the barrel now. So there's now a North Korea, North versus South Korea. So Korean War expansion, and so on. And there's third-party products, even expanding into the Arab-Israeli wars and so on and so on. But even if you just stick to World War II, you'll have enough to do for a lifetime if you want, or anything among that. So one
Oh yeah.
interesting thing is that 1985 saw the publication of this game, but the publication was a reorganization. It was a pinnacle of a long development. So the guy who wrote this, Mr. Greenwood, not Ed, but Don Greenwood, he closed himself off for 1 year. So Evelyn Hill paid him 1 year just to reorganize the rules from the preceding game mats. So before Advanced Squad Leader, there was Squad Leader, and this was more like like OD&D. It had a basic set and then an addition, and this would change stuff and so on and so on. They had like 4 of these game mats, but at that point it would be total mess, right? So nothing would.
Oh yeah.
So this is how this developed, and but in the advanced rules add one thing that is of interest to us role-playing gamers, and those are the ambush rules. So an ambush, and this wasn't there in Squad Leader, an ambush is a very powerful thing that can happen if you do
One specific clarification. So you had squad leader first, and then advanced squad leader came out later, and
yeah,
these rules were added. That's what you mean, right?
yeah. The ambush rules were
Okay.
not present in Squad Leader. So
Right,
they were
right, right.
not there in the 70s. So Squad Leader precedes Dungeons and Dragons, but
Yeah,
Advanced Squad Leader is from
does
1985.
not.
So this is after
Okay.
the publication of AD&D, right?
AD&D. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So what this ambush rule does, it's a very powerful thing that can happen in melee. Melee is when two opposing forces come into the same hex, right? As you can see in this screenshot, there's two melees happening, right? There's the blue guys, which would be Germans, fighting some green guys in both of those hexes, right? And do you see which ones I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. So they move into if they move into the same hex, and if they're in buildings or in forests, then an ambush can occur, right? So it could happen that they engage in close fighting, right, with machine guns and shovels
Hand
and
grenades
hand
and
grenades.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very deadly, and it's often a part of the final moments of a game, right? Can I take this building or not? So the
Oh yeah.
ambush is a very powerful thing, because if you ambush the other guys, your attacks comes first. Losses are deducted, and then the
Then
others.
only then you can fire back. Yeah, so you have
Yeah,
a massive sort of an alpha strike advantage. Yeah.
exactly. You get the jump on the
Okay.
other guys, right? Or you could retreat if you ambush the other guys and you don't want to fight. You can retreat. Sound
Yeah.
familiar, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it does.
So, and if you look at the actual rules, it's an example of the elegance and the detail of the ASL system. So the idea is that if you beat, so you roll for ambush, everybody rolls 1d6, right? 1d6 just, and if the difference, if you are 3 or lower than your opponent's roll, then you ambush them.
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Okay, and then this is all of the rule, right? It's a very easy mechanism. It's very quickly done for a lot of melees that could happen, right? In a game turn. So what is important are those modifiers, because with this difference, right, so a plus one or minus one for either side changes the probabilities largely. I have a lot of slides on that, but this is for a later video, and this will take an hour, I guess. But
Either way, right.
so
So,
go ahead.
are you going to explain the table of the ambush? Like what the I can sort of hint at the cause. So we see a bunch of bonuses here.
Which ones do you
Uh,
understand?
well, I understand the cause. I think.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand what DRM represents. This is some sort of attack roll. I take
No,
it.
that's a die roll modifier. DRM is special code
Right.
for die roll modifier.
Got
So
you.
yeah, ASL has a lot of shortcuts,
Yes.
abbreviations that are used throughout, and it has magic words. It's sort of like legalese, and
Yes.
this is totally not how Gary was writing his rules, right? So it's
No, no, no. But this is more something you would see in D20 or third edition.
yeah. So
Oh
DR
yeah.
means die roll. DRM is die roll modifier, and if it's a big DR, like the capital letter, then it means 2 dice. But if it's just a small, that means 1 die, right? So even that is coded. So it's a DRM +2 if you are a vehicle. So if you are a tank, or a tank is in your hex, then you get a +2, because you're very noisy and big. You will have a hard time surprising others, because you want to roll lower than the other guy, right? So you want to have the lower result than the other guy. So the bank counter, that would be would take too long to explain. BU means bottomed up. If you close the hatch of your tank, and or if you're stunned, right? That sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go over
Yeah.
every. I can extrapolate, and I hope the audience can too. But I get the general idea.
Okay,
These
great. Yeah.
a couple of conditions, such as if you're cavalry, you're more likely to do poor at ambushing, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and if you're stealthy or concealed, there we go.
Yeah. And
You
that's a
get an
very
advantage.
important thing,
Makes
right?
sense. Self-explanatory.
Stealthy. All rangers are stealthy, right? Rangers are a kind of elite troop
Yes.
that are stealthy. I mean, the army rangers, right? So,
Oh yeah.
and concealment is, of course, if you're hidden, right? So, okay. If this sounds familiar, then of course we already looked at it. This has precedent, not in other war games, but in OD&D, right? Here we have the surprise rule of OD&D. OD&D is pretty clear, and I think the basic editions are very similar in their wording. So you just roll a 1 or a 2, or each party rolls, and if you roll a 1 or a 2, then your party is surprised, right?
Yes.
And then you have a problem there because you now have three states. Either you are surprised and the others are not, or the inverse state, or both are surprised or both are not surprised, right? So that should, I think,
So that's 4 states.
4 states, yes.
Yes.
And this takes more words and makes it sound
Yes.
confusing.
And in BX or something, because you don't use segments, the condition of both parties are not surprised would just both parties are surprised is identical to both parties are not surprised, right? Because
Exactly.
it cancels each other out. Yeah.
But it's still written about,
Right.
right? So they're still wasting words.
Here it is definitely. Yeah, it is important. Yeah. Okay. They are wasting words. That's true.
So the concept is basically, or it is very similar, and we will see how how those people got there. Okay, so now let's move on to first edition, right? So AD&D first edition. So the first surprise elements there you can see are pretty much the same, but it adds some, of course, because the advanced edition, it says some monsters are more capable of surprising foes than the normal 2 and 6 probability, and some cannot be surprised as easily, so they have a reduced probability, 1 in 6, 1 in 8, and so on and so on. And it starts talking about segments, right? So the segments come now in, so there's now different degrees of surprise that AD&D tries to tackle. And
Right.
then there's this table, this infamous table from I think it's in the PHP, and I think it's replicated in the DMG, of the whole idea of surprise dice difference. So OD&D and Basic, they don't talk about the difference of dice, right? But
Right.
the first edition does. And if you try to read this, you will find that there's at least two areas where there's a contradiction, especially here. Do you see the red mark?
Yes. The one. Oh yeah, I remember going over this. If you just the way it's more the way it's written. That the concepts are not that difficult, right?
Yes.
But yes, reading this and not being prepared for it will give you a seizure. That's true.
Yeah, because usually if you roll as a monster, you roll a 4, even if
Right.
the enemy rolls a 3, that should not make you surprised, or even right?
Yeah.
That sort of doesn't make sense. So there's actually a misprint. I think that was errata later on, but there's more to it, so that you can see there has to be. This can not only be a typo that
Do you want to walk us through the idea in AD&D, or what the audience already know?
well, we can do this right in a second, but let me just
Right.
quickly finish this
Okay.
thought. So there's this
Yes.
etc., right? And this doesn't
Yeah.
make sense because you would always think, you would start to think, okay, what I need is the difference between the dice, and this would determine the surprise. And
Right.
this laid the groundwork for this whole idea of maybe I don't have to say have this 4 states, and now those 4 states are even differentiated by the number of lost segments, so I can be surprised for 1, 2, or even 3 segments.
Oh yes.
Yeah, right. So this makes it conceptually much more complex, and it's contradictory to okay, I can only be surprised if I roll a 1 or a 2, right? So this confused people, and it's actually not. So it's self-contradictory. But if you read the DMG and the examples, then the rule that Gary actually meant is pretty clear, and that's what we can talk about. Each side rolls a d6, and each side has a different, depending. If you're a ranger, you're only surprised on a 5 and
On a
6.
1. Oh,
Oh, only on
wait.
a 1. Yeah, right. This
On
way,
a
yeah.
1.
But
And your chance to surprise increases by 1.
Yes.
So the monsters then become surprised on a 3 to 1. And some monsters have surprise ranges of 4, or I believe even 5 in 5 and 6.
Exactly. And if you are a halfling, you surprise them on a 1 to 4. So you get a sort of a 2 bonus, or you give a 2 minus DRM to the enemy, but then you still have to roll your own. And this is actually does weird things to the statistics, right?
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah, let's not even get into being surprised on a 1 in 10.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When yeah. No, of course.
But the idea how this actually works in the game is pretty easy. Each side rolls a die, no matter which die, and then the DM decides, okay, depending on circumstances, either one is surprised, and there's a lot of talk about the circumstances, and usually it's pretty straightforward, and then you'd only have to determine how many segments you are surprised, and you only check for the segments once one side is surprised and the other not, right? So it's like in
Right.
basic, it's like in basic, but then you check if it's one, two, or maybe even three segments,
And
and then
how do you determine segments by you look at the
yeah,
difference.
then you look at the difference. That's right.
Okay.
But
So
what is missing on the or what is confusing on the table on the right or on the segment on the right of this of
yes.
our screen right now is that they miss to talk about that first you have to be surprised and then you have this mistake of the 1 to 4 that the monster surprised the monster should never be surprised on a 4, right?
Yeah, that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If this is way, oh yeah,
So
assume the party of characters moving silently and invisibly. No, yeah, it comes upon a monster. Is this a yes? No, this is a. They have 4 to 6 chances to surprise. 4 of 6. So the monster would be surprised on a 1 to 4.
yeah, okay,
Yes, this is accurate.
with modifiers, but
Yeah. No, but they specified that here.
um
Yes.
yes,
This is by the way, this is one of the worst ways to explain it. I think to
yes,
take a to not even go into the just the basic trade off, but to immediately take just a very fairly complex I guess scenario. It shouldn't really matter, but it kind of does. Yeah.
what is interesting, so I looked at this long time for quite some time, all the monsters and all the instances, and what actually is pretty consistent is that Gary and the gang, they were giving a -1 or a +1 bonus to surprise others when you are stealthy, in the sense that you are you are not able to be heard, and then if you are not able to be seen, so you get a double bonus. If you're like invisible and silenced, you get a -2 basically, or the others are surprised on a 1 to 4, right, as you said. So this is pretty
Oh yeah.
consistent actually in the AD&D rules, but you have to engage with it, and this is sort of the, yeah, as you said, at least this table on
Well,
the right is the worst way to explain it.
yes, and it's also like the monster has a 5 in 6 chance to surprise. But every party rolls whether they are surprised. So if the monster has a 5 in 6 chance of surprise, that means that you have to look at the party dice, and if it's 1 to 5, then the party is surprised.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, and this is the whole problem with the ranger modifying both sides too, right?
Yeah,
So
and
so this is a very unelegant way, but we can
yeah,
see,
of explaining it.
yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
uh, if we look at 1977, what Mark Miller did, he cleaned this up, right? He cleaned this mess up, or cleaned it, even had a clean interpretation even before the DMG came out, right? I mean, this was from the PHP, what we just looked at. Okay, if we look at Traveler, we can definitely see the inspiration, but we now see a wargaming trained mind. I mean, a hex and counter wargaming trained mind. Somebody who read
Right.
science fiction and not Conan.
Science fiction doesn't make you good at math.
That's
Most
true.
science fiction authors are bad at math. In
Oh, that's
fact.
very
Well,
true.
maybe not nowadays, but
Yeah, I was trying to lighten
yeah.
up the mood.
That's not going to happen. This is
Yeah,
grim and serious business. We're playing
you're
advanced.
you're very right. So, what Traveler does is here. The important part is here. Roll one die for each party. If one party has a die roll of 3 or more greater than the other party, the higher rolling party has achieved surprise. DMs
All
are
right,
allowed
fair
for each,
enough.
right? So this is putting it elegantly all in one calculation. It takes this
Yes.
inspiration from this whole, okay, this is more, and then adds in all the modifiers. And if you look at the surprise DMs there, I think very easy to understand, right? And If you look at the rest of the rule, it's also very clearly written. Like if you look at the second sentence after the first, steps 1, 2, 3 are executed only once per encounter. Step 4 is performed cyclically. So combat procedure, determine a surprise, determine initial range, determine escape or avoidance, and then this is only once, and then number 4, and this is cyclical, each party, and so on, right? So it's very structured, a very clean writing, very clean text that there's no ambiguity, basically. And you get this abstraction that is in first edition is baked into all these, nooks and crannies, like the ranger has this and the halfling this, and you have to extrapolate, okay, this is the same as being invisible and so on. Here it's just, plainly there. And if we then compare these kinds of DMs to the ambush DMs, you definitely see the influence there.
You do see sort of a heritage. Oh, yeah, of course.
Right? So it's just reversed because in Traveler you want to be 3 greater than the other guys.
Sure.
Surprise.
Oh, oh yeah, of course. Enemy DR by at least 3. Ah, okay. I had not read the above paragraph. Now it makes sense. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Did these people know each other? Did the guy who did Advanced Squad Leader, did he know anything about Traveler? Or?
Oh, no. He would know that Traveler existed. He would know the name Mark Miller and Frank Chadwick and these guys from Game Designers Workshop because they actually are mostly Hex Encounter Wargame company, right?
Okay.
So they would know about them, would have met them at the Origins convention, but both of those would not have been the kind to go to Gen Con. That was the Origins crowd, right? I mean, Mark
So
Miller would...
this might even be parallel evolution.
No, I don't believe it for a second. They definitely knew. So, I mean, at GDW, at Game Designers Workshop, where Travelers developed, they had to enforce a rule when Dungeons and Dragons came out. So they were playing day and night, and then the owner of the company, or the main, the boss, basically, Frank Chadwick, he said, okay, no more Dungeons and Dragons while the sun is up, because they wouldn't get any work done. So they would be playing the hell out of it. And
yeah.
And the guys at Avalon Hill, they also knew about the role-playing games. But I think they were even more stuffy. I think they would not admit that this rule is actually that they took this from Gary Gygax, basically, right?
But that it was inspired.
Yeah, inspired by.
But these surprise DMs, this is all. So the heritage goes from Traveler to Advanced Squad Leader now.
Well, that's
what we've sort of established.
You could say this. I mean, it's not foolproof, but yeah. But,
okay, all right. Or at least that's sort of where the resemblance kind of goes. Yes. Okay, all right. So far, I'm still with you.
Yeah. So, but the original idea is basically the same. I mean, if you play ASL or Traveler, and then you go to AD&D, AD&D immediately makes sense. It's like just a more convoluted way of doing the thing you've been doing all the time, right? So this is my life story, right? So I've been playing Traveler since, I don't know, very early 90s. So, and then later on I came to first edition, and then I said, oh, why is everybody confused about surprise? It's very easy. What's going on here, right? It's just, more elaborately written. It's baroquely written. But it's very easy to clean up a good idea, but it's very hard to come up with a good idea and even codify it enough that other people can clean it up, right? So this sort of my point there, and that even Advanced Squad Leader with all these rules guys, they could not, they did not come up with one of the basic mechanisms on their own. There was a gift back from the role-playing innovator, Gary Gygax, to the wargaming world. And he was a wargamer, but he's often lauded as he created his total new game, or at least the building blocks, and Dave invented the new game, and Gary invented all the building blocks and published it and so on. What I want to show in this video, or at least make a good point for, is that Gary was a kind of a mind that was innovating in all kinds of directions and doing major contributions, right? Major contributions, like the matrix table, and that basically is the center of Empires and Arms, one of the gaming hall of fame. That's like, it's like if you would find that that an electronic musician that you really like actually also wrote one of the greatest blues guitar riffs that you know. Oh, I'm going again with music with you, right? That was a bad idea.
Well, I don't listen to blues. I think I can shop talk a little bit about like metal. There's a little bit of classical music, but musically speaking, I'm some sort of cross between, I guess, a complete philistine, some sort of shit-covered peasant. I think that's the best description. I'm
Fair
not
enough.
very well versed in much music. I like music, don't get me wrong, but no, I don't have a refined palate or taste for it.
Sure, no problem. But you get my point, right? So Gary was innovating.
Yes.
I mean, he was also
No.
innovating in chess, but I don't know nothing about chess, so that might be something for you. But
It could be. But so the Traveler Initiative system,
yes,
Traveler, of course, is was came out long after OD&D. It must have, but did it come out after AD&D?
um, yes, it's 1977, so that's
Oh
after the Player's
no.
Handbook.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Now that's but that example that you posted is that's the DMG, right? Or is that the PHP?
No,
Did they
that's the
already have
PHP.
the?
That's the confusing
Okay.
thing is the PHP.
The PHP
The
has
conf
the example. So
yes,
your thesis is basically it goes from AD&D. So the refined version goes from AD&D to some sort of refinement in Traveler, and I'm willing
yes,
to believe that of course they would have known what uh, AD&D would have looked like, right? And then it migrates to Advanced Squad Leader 8 years later, right?
yes,
Okay, all right, we're on the same page.
yeah. That would be sort of my yeah. That's it.
That's your theory. Yeah,
I
okay.
think the
Pretty good.
table from Traveler that I showed you was from the 1980 version actually. So
Right.
there's more room for the player's handbook there.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, there might be. I mean, in the comments, please write us if you know some other war game or some other role playing game that did this initiative thing. But I'm pretty sure this is Gary's contribution right there. And yeah, again, he was a very special mind in my opinion. He was not only a convergent thinking man, but also, of course, a divergent thinking man. But he could, be both at the same time and get creations from the one realm into the other, whereas other people would stay in their realm. If you, yeah, I don't know what's your point on this. You get more the literary side of things often. Gary also tried to be an author. Did you read
Oh
any?
yeah, it was pretty bad
He
at
was pretty bad.
authorship. But to be well, it might surprise you, but I so my father is a mathematician. So yeah, I did a pretty very, we call it beta, right? I don't mean like in the sense of like what a beta, but like these were during my high school years, I had chemistry, physics, math, all that sort of stuff, like
Yeah,
the
sure.
heaviest stuff I could do. And then I did some sort of weak ass social science study. I did psychology in college, right? But it's you are correct that it's kind of like rare because these two images, right? It's your describing this sort of the divergent thinking is more like sort of like these, and you have these people, they exist, like these sort of like dreamers that can generate like just like a flood of creative ideas, um, and then there are more like the very systematic sort of thinkers. I think I used an RPG analogy that may be familiar to anybody who is into old school role playing games. But you have like the divergent thinker would be that would be Patrick Stewart, right? This is the creative guy. He everything he does, he generates like a flood of like ideas that sort of like leap out, right? And then you have on the other side of the spectrum, completely, you have guys like Alexander Macris, or to a lesser degree also Kevin Crawford, who are very adept at analysis, at systems, at manipulating systems as well. These people are very good at building comprehensive domain management rule sets, or um, yeah, what's another good example? Yeah, sandbox tools, right?
Hmm.
It's it's kind of like that. That's sort of like the idea. This is a different way of approaching the problem. Sure.
Yeah, and yeah, my point was to be that
And Gary is in the middle, is what you're saying. More or less in the middle. He
well,
could kind of do both.
he could, let's
Yes.
say, I'm not saying he was excellent in convergent thinking, but he was able to make big contributions there, right? For the most convergent or most logical or closed system that exists, like advanced squad leader, right? That's a,
Oh yeah.
so, and he was able to be good enough to bring it into the other world, and he did this for both worlds, right? So I guess that's our time tonight. Thank you for joining. If you have any closing words, please
I
share.
don't have any parting words. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and I hope it was clear and informative.
Yeah, and again, write us in the descriptions if you think the lineage might be different, if there's a missing step, a missing link. No problem, but I think the idea is out there. And yeah, thanks for listening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.